I decided to split this into two parts because I felt that the textbook or the tech book really flowed very quickly over Thomas Paine and Common Sense, and I feel that it really needs a lot more attention to it. So let's get into it. Tom Paine was actually British. He was a British immigrant. He had come to America because he was frustrated with the old world. In a lot of ways, he failed in business, failed in life, and he happened to come across Benjamin Franklin, who was there as the ambassador at the time and for Pennsylvania. And two of them strike up a conversation. He's talking about his frustrations living in England. And Franklin says, hey, you should come to America. Check out Pennsylvania, where I live. So he does it, and he loves it. Paine himself was always kind of the guy who always wanted to fight authority. If he was a student, he'd be always picking fights with his teacher. He was not one that liked somebody standing above him, acting like they were better than him. During this time period, if you want to get information out quickly and cheaply to a large group of people, you would do pamphlets. Pamphlets were printed on cheap, pulpy paper. They could be distributed quickly, and it was not something that you would keep like a book that was of value, almost like a newspaper. It's something that was almost disposable, but could get information around very quickly. Pamphlets, in a lot of ways, were like the Twitter of their day. People are able to reach thousands, millions of people on social media very quickly and spread their messages in a very fast way that is very low cost. So Thomas Paine, who is feeling this frustration with England and wants to let people know about it and wants to get other people to feel the same sense that he does, takes to writing pamphlets to spread the news. In January 1776, he publishes a 46-page pamphlet that he titles Common Sense. 46 pages for a book is pretty short, and it was meant to be a quick read, something that the average American farmer, merchant, regular everyday person could read. It is written in very plain language, but has very powerful and strong arguments. And he makes the case that America going to war with Great Britain is just flat common sense. It's as simple as, I shouldn't cross the highway when it's, there's a ton of cars going by at 70 miles an hour. It's probably a bad idea. Or, I shouldn't put my hand in a blender that's going. It's not a good idea. It's just, you don't have to be a genius to understand it. It's common sense. And he says that the decision to break away with England is that simple. It's common sense. And his plain language and powerful messages really reach the fence sitters, the moderates, the people who were sitting on the fence. And he makes the case for them that really the only choice that you have is to go to war with England. In the words of John Adams, without the pen of the author of Common Sense, the sword of George Washington would have been raised in vain. It was Adams that advocated for Washington to lead the army, but Washington leading the army would have been for nothing if he didn't have Thomas Paine. So I'm just going to break down a couple of the key arguments of Common Sense. One of the first ones, overall, Common Sense changes people's perception and attitude towards England and the king. The idea that the king is above everybody, that the king, that we owe the king loyalty, that the king is this great and mighty person. Remember, it's against the law to speak negatively, publicly against the king. And some of the things that he says are absolute treason and were criminal in England at the time. But it does a lot to, once again, knock the king off of his pedestal, to change their whole attitude. So one argument that he makes is that, America, the colonists don't owe Britain loyalty. And if you look at his actual words there, which I encourage you to read, but for the sake of expediency, I'm going to try to translate for you. So if you look at this first one here, what Payne is saying is that, England didn't protect us. She didn't engross us for years because she liked us. She defended us because she made money off of us. She'd defend her worst enemy to make money and to get land. So why do we owe somebody loyalty who only protected us to make money off of us? He also makes into that end that we don't owe England loyalty, the argument over here that England's not really our mother country. People say, well, England's our mother country. We should honor our mother country. I say, dude, England's not our mother. Europe's our mother. People that live in America, at least during this time period, most of the people that are living as colonists, once again, Payne is excluding the slaves and excluding the natives, but most of the people that had moved from to America by choice were not just from England. We're from all over Europe. We're from Ireland. We're from Sweden. We're from France. We're from the Germanic states. We're from the Netherlands. To say to all those people, England's your mother, doesn't make sense. And why did they all come here? Did they come here because everything was great in England? No. They came here because life stunk in England, because life stunk in Europe, because their liberties and lives are under attack. They didn't come here, if you look at his line here, hither they fled, not from the tender embraces of the mother, but from the cruelty of the monster. He calls England and European system basically monstrous abusers. So he says to them, we owe you nothing at all. Down with the crown. Another way that he changed people's attitude is that a lot of people would say, well, how can we make money without England? If we don't stay with England, we'll never make money. We've grown with England. And he makes the argument that not only will America grow economically without Britain, but we'll do better without her. We actually be quite better off without England. We'll make more money. So the part of that argument is that America is always going to make money because, well, America has something that all of Europe needs, food. And as long as people in Europe need to eat, they're going to need to buy our food. We have stuff that they need. We have the raw materials that they want. So they're always going to shop from us. They don't have a choice. And number two, he gets into the idea that, well, who did England protect us from? Our enemies? No, they protect us from England's enemies. The French and Indian War, the Spanish, other people that they have protected us against. Why do they want to attack us? Because they hated us? No, because they hated England. They're trying to hurt us to hurt England. So if we're not with England anymore, well, now these people like France and Spain, instead of being our enemies, can be our friends. We can trade with them too. As long as we're with England, we're not allowed to trade with them. So now we can trade with the world. So the whole idea, once again, this idea that, we'll be better off without them. We were fine before you, and we'll be better off without you. Then he gets into the idea of, well, why should we stay with this king and this government that have only done bad things to us? So many bad things have happened. We can't forgive and forget them. The only thing that will happen if we stay with England is it will continue to get hurt. Things won't get better. He talks about how reconciliation, making up with the British, is a fallacious dream. It's a lie. It's a fantasy. We can't forgive and reconcile with somebody who's done all these horrible things to us, who killed our people in the streets, who have sent armies into our houses, who allowed them to search and steal our property, who gave them protection to murder us, who taxed us without our permission. All these horrible things. How can we forgive and forget? To talk about friendship with those whom are reason for business have faith is madness. To talk about friendship with somebody who's punched us in the face every day, that we've tried to be friends with them, that doesn't make sense. We shouldn't be their friend. England is a bully. They'll continue to be a bully. We should not. It doesn't make sense to want to be their friend. And one of the ways I really like is that he just goes into the whole logistics of how it just doesn't make sense on paper for England to rule America. It's illogical. It's silly for America, a continent, to be governed by an island that is more than 3,000 miles away. It just is silly. And he makes an argument really well that's just silly for a small little island to control a continent. You see the picture of the Earth here being bigger than the sun. That doesn't make sense because small things usually don't control something much bigger than it. England controlling America, a small island controlling a continent, is like the Earth controlling the sun. It just doesn't make sense. And then if we go into here, that the distance is just as silly. That, all right, wait a minute. They're 3,000 miles away. They're our government. They're supposed to be there to help and protect us. Can you imagine if your house was on fire and you had to wait for the fire department to come from California, 3,000 miles from your home? That really wouldn't make sense, wouldn't it? You want a government that's nearby you to be able to govern things effectively. So he's saying it's silly to have the people who make our decisions 3,000 miles away. It doesn't make sense. And lastly, he changes attitudes towards England and the king in that the very idea of a king itself is against natural rights. If you think that you should have the right to have a voice in government, if you think that you should have a right to choose your own religion, to speak your mind, to be informed, to learn, to have justice, kings will never let you have those things. So if you believe in those things, then let's stand up, fight for your rights. He says, let's make America a safe place for all mankind, for all the people who have been persecuted and oppressed from around the world. Now is the time to make this country. I'm going to get into what the second part of the article talks a little bit about the lead up to the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to get into tomorrow's lesson because I spent so much time talking about common sense. So here is your question. So what I'd like you to do is to take one of those arguments that were presented from common sense and rewrite it in your own words, post it up as a comment under here, and you're done. Have a marvelous Monday, everybody. Thanks for watching.